Hi, everybody. Good evening. It's 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. Thank you all for coming out. We have a small but mighty group of interested individuals, so thank you for taking the time to come out and learn a little bit about the Nevada County Planning Department. My name is Brian Foss. I'm the planning director with the county, and I oversee the planning department and its functions and operations. All of our planners are here tonight, and we'll be taking turns going through different parts of our presentation with the intention of giving you all an overview of what the planning department does, our processes, some of the information and guiding documents that really inform the decisions that are made for land use development projects at a staff level or through the decision makers like the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors. We are also streaming this meeting live through our YouTube channel and are recording it for future viewing that will be up on our website. So, like I mentioned, the purpose of this meeting is to meet the people of the planning department. So if you're following a project, you come into the department to ask questions, or you're following a project and want to get information, very likely who you're contacting will be one of the people in this room. So we wanted to put a face with a name and then also kind of tie that to our process and our roles in land use entitlements and the planning process. It can be a long and confusing and complicated process, so we kind of want to try to lay out all the information so that people are aware of different milestones, different processes, and how they can interact and communicate with the county and the planning department for a project they're interested in or a project they're following. So a little bit about the workshop outline. As I mentioned, one of the big purposes of this meeting is to go over the department structure, how different policies are created, how they're applied, and how they're followed and enforced through new development, but also to give the public some information regarding where are the points in a project application where there's an opportunity to provide input, provide comment, get information about a development project that may be next door to you or something you're interested in that's happening within the community. And on the other side, again, if you're interested in potentially applying for a project that may be a discretionary project or an administrative project, what to expect as you go through the process. What are the types of information that might be required? How are decisions made? What are the different steps in the process that will affect your timing and the types of information that we are looking for to review, analyze an application, and ultimately take it to a decision maker or approve it at a staff level. We're going to touch on some of the guiding documents that inform land use decisions, the general plan, the zoning ordinance, the California Environmental Quality Act, and a little bit, maybe not too much, on the Subdivision Map Act that has to do with subdividing properties. And then, as I mentioned, we want to go over the discretionary process and the administrative process. Different type of projects require a public hearing, public notice, go before the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors. Others are done at a staff level where the Community Development Agency and the Planning Department, Building Department, Environmental Health Department, et cetera, will review an application and approve it at a staff level without any type of public hearing. And then, of course, we want to reserve some time for some questions and dialogue if there's any information we haven't covered, or if you want to ask certain questions or get into more details about things we have covered. We'll have time after our presentation, which hopefully will be about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for public comments. So just starting out, the mission statement of the planning department is to apply community land use policies while striving to meet the needs of individuals and businesses. In meeting these needs, it is our goal to protect the environment in order to ensure that Nevada County remains a desirable place to live, work, and recreate. So how do we do that, and what does that mean? Really, that is trying to achieve a balance between growth, needs of the community, protecting things that are important to the community, whether that's the physical environment, the rural nature of the county, but also providing opportunities for people to live, grow, build businesses, have some economic prosperity. But it is a balance. And these land use policies that are mentioned in the mission statement are those basically that are crafted and contained within our general plan. And the planning department, we're made up of two divisions. One is what we call advanced planning, and that is the division that writes those policies, that interacts with the community, that brings those policies to the Board of Supervisors for ultimate adoption and approval, because they are the final decision makers. And then we have our current planning, which is reviewing current development applications, current development projects, and applying those policies that are created through a community process and ultimately approved by the Board of Supervisors, and how those apply to individuals who are looking to develop a piece of land, subdivide a piece of land, build a house, build a business, et cetera. And later in the slides, we will kind of go in a little more detail regarding the priorities and the duties of advanced planning and the current planning process. So I've talked or alluded to the general plan quite a bit. The general plan is kind of the overall guiding document that dictates how the county is organized in terms of different land uses. It's commonly referred to as the blueprint for the county because it identifies a number of policies that pertain to physical, economic, and environmental issues, and it is the foundation for where different land use types can go. It kind of separates and organizes agricultural land versus commercial land versus industrial land, residential. One of the main things that it strives to do is provide that balance and provide compatibility between adjacent land uses. We want to protect the open spaces in our ag lands where appropriate, but allow for development and industrial type uses in areas that have adequate infrastructure, that are developed, and can operate and function in those areas without hopefully minimally impacting adjacent neighborhoods, residential, open space, recreation areas. I won't read all of that, but it's basically a document comprised of the goals, objectives, and policies. It's divided into 19 different elements or chapters that range from our land use element that dictate those commercial versus agriculture versus residential, circulation element, open space element, housing, noise, agriculture, economic development. We have 19 total, and under each one of those chapters are specific policies and goals that strive to enhance those types of categories, drive appropriate development, and support those certain areas like agriculture, economic development, provide for adequate housing. The overall central themes of our general plan, as you can see, are those four bullet points there that all the policies together strive to accomplish. First is fostering a rural quality of life. Nevada County is obviously a rural, beautiful community, and the general plan strives to maintain that and protect that while sustaining a quality environment and developing a strong, diversified, sustainable local economy. And then the planned land use patterns, again, is to determine the level of public service appropriate to the character, economy, and environment of each region in order to provide that balance for places for people to work, to recreate, to live, all in a compatible and as harmoniously as possible. Part of the general plan, again, as I mentioned, there's 19 chapters. Each chapter goes into more detail about those different types of categories. We won't dive that deep into everything, but our general plan is our main primary resource that kind of drives our land use decisions and determines where new development is determined to be appropriate throughout the county, and it is online, so we will give some links to our resources at the end of this presentation. Part of the general plan is the mapping of the different categories of land use designation. This is an example of land use designations in the Penn Valley area. And as you can see, represented by the different colors, different high-level kind of overarching types of land uses. RES, residential, RUR is rural. We have some urban medium density in the blue, some public in the gray, commercial is in kind of the red, industrial is in the purple. And so that's kind of an indicator of what those uses are and or could be. So a lot of this area is developed, but there are a few open parcels, and so this provides the information about what's likely to occur on those pieces of property if and when someone wants to develop them or expand existing uses. So that really creates the foundation that drives the rules that apply to certain pieces of property. It's based on the land use general plan and the land use designation of the property at a high level, a 30,000 foot type of level. The next level below the general plan is the zoning ordinance. And so the zoning ordinance is meant to implement the policies of the general plan in a much more specific manner. It will outline the types of uses that are allowed, the types of densities for residential. It may be one house per every 20 acres in the rural area. It may be one house per every acre in the more urban areas, and it may be 6 units per acre in the more dense urban areas of the county, like Lake of the Pines area, Penn Valley, and areas around the cities of Grass Valley. But the zoning ordinance and the general plan are meant to act in tandem, where the zoning ordinance is more specific, in addition to outlining and identifying the types of allowed uses that are allowed in commercial zones. It also identifies setback requirements, height limitations, open space requirements, impervious surfacing requirements, and all those things are identified and required in order to implement the policies of the general plan, whether it's to protect the environment, protect the compatibility with neighboring properties, and overall organize future development within the county so that it is situated correctly for appropriate infrastructure, whether it's water or sewer, or neighboring compatibility. We don't want our urban commercial areas out in the ag lands, out in the rural areas that don't have adequate water or sewer or adequate roadways or circulation. So this is kind of the map that really starts and provides the foundation for what is likely to occur on a piece of property. And I won't read all those, but it's basically, it's implementation of the general plan a little bit more specifically. So it's kind of the next level diving down onto the permitting process and the allowed uses on a piece of property. And similarly, this is the same area that shows the zoning. And again, it's intended to be compatible. So if you kind of recognize some of the residential areas on the lower left side were kind of a large area of residential on the general plan. It's a little more specific with RA, RA3, C2. It just hones in and provides a little bit more specifics on the different types of allowed uses that correspond to our zoning ordinance. So at this point, that's kind of a high-level overview of two of our main driving documents that really inform land use decision and our decision makers. It's intended to provide information. So if you're looking to buy a piece of property or moving next door to a piece of property, understanding what it's zoned for, understanding what the general plan is, should give you a good indicator of what is likely to occur next door. So these are, public documents developed through a public process approved by our Board of Supervisors. So intended to not have any surprises, that if you live next door to an industrial piece of property, you can potentially expect an industrial project will come in. If you live next to an open space parcel, likely that parcel should remain in open space. So that's kind of a high level. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Geiger, our senior planner. He's going to go into a little bit more detail regarding the advanced planning. Set it up for you there, Steve.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Geiger. I'm senior planner with the department. And as Brian alluded to, there are two main areas that we as planners work in, advanced planning and current planning. I'm going to be explaining to you or giving more information on the advanced planning side of it. So what are some examples of advanced planning? Well, the general plan and zoning ordinance, maintenance of those documents, updates, implementation. We also have development of area plans in the county. We have 5 identified area plans. Greater Higgins, just some examples, Greater Higgins, North San Juan, Penn Valley, Soda Springs. Those are some of the examples. We have processing of special projects that are assigned by the board supervisors, completion of special projects related to state funding for policy improvement, as well as maintenance of information and data on population and other demographic, social, economic factors. We do have information built into the general plan that talks about those areas, and we like to keep that current as well. Oops, went the wrong way. There we go. Okay. So I wanted to give you an example of an advanced planning project that's currently in process, and that's the safety element update that we're currently working on. So the safety element is one of the 7 general plan, one of the 7 required general plan elements that is required by the state to be prepared by cities and counties. Its purpose basically is to reduce potential short-term, long-term risks for loss of life, injuries resulting from public safety hazards. So it contains background information, goals, and policies on such areas as emergency preparedness, flood hazards, hazardous materials, mining hazards, public safety services and facilities, fire hazards and protection, even severe weather hazards and extreme heat. That has become as of late, a bigger issue that the state wants to see counties address is these severe heat events as well as storm events. So this project does include the notification of the public as well as private organizations, preparation of an environmental document that's required by the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, and public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, where ultimately it will go before them for adoption. And right now we are anticipating trying to have that ready for the board to consider early in 2026. Okay, another example of advanced planning is a zoning ordinance amendment. And just to give you an overview, you might ask, well, how are those initiated? They can be initiated by the Board of Supervisors, by the Planning Department, or even members of the public can all initiate an ordinance amendment. What's the process? Well, planning staff will begin by generally conducting research regarding the amendment. We may get information from other county departments or even outside agencies. We may gather additional information through public workshops or through conducting a survey. And then we will go about preparing a draft of the amendment wording, and eventually it will be scheduled for public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. What's the opportunity for comments? Well, comments actually could be submitted anytime during the process. Anytime once the process begins, you can submit your comments. But typically, the best opportunities are at a workshop. You may have heard that we did have a couple of workshops regarding the cell tower ordinance, as well as the alternative housing ordinance. yeah, those are the best opportunities at a workshop. And then the next one would be during the environmental review when it's completed and scheduled for hearing, and also at the hearings, the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors hearings. How long do they usually take? Well, that varies too, based on the scope of each amendment, how detailed it is. Generally, just as a general rule, 4 to 8 months, sometimes longer it could take, depending on the scope of it and what's involved. Is CEQA required? Yes, it is required to be addressed. Oftentimes, we can do a minimal review, or it can even be exempted due to typically ordinance amendments don't have any direct physical impact on the environment, as opposed to a current project that you might see. Who approves them? Well, the Board of Supervisors approves them. Does the county's ordinances apply to the city ordinances? Well, no. We have our own ordinances, and they don't apply to the city. Oftentimes, that's one of the questions we get, that we have to, calls come in, and people are asking about a property, what's my property zoned, what's my setback? We look it up, and lo and behold, they're in the city, and so we have to refer them to the city of Nevada City or Grass Valley, because they have their own planning departments and their own requirements. So an example of a recent county ordinance amendment is the Tiny Home on Wheels ordinance that was approved early this year. You may have heard of that. And are there any ordinance amendments currently in process? Yes, as I mentioned before, the cell tower ordinance, as well as the alternative housing, are two examples of amendments that are in process. So that's kind of my overview on advanced planning, and now I'm going to turn it over to David Nicholas. He's going to come up and talk to you about current planning.
Hello everyone, my name is David Nicholas. I'm an associate planner here at Nevada County. A lot of the work I do is focused in this current planning portion of the planning department. And so essentially what we're doing is we're reviewing and processing all the land use applications in unincorporated Nevada County, and those can range from anything simple like adjusting property lines to things that are more complex, like developing an apartment complex or a shopping center or even a gold mine or something like that. And while we're reviewing these projects, it's an opportunity for us to make sure that these projects are in alignment with the ordinances that advanced planning develops. So we're reviewing these projects for consistency with the general plan, the zoning ordinance, or the subdivision ordinance and subdivision map act in case of a subdivision. The planning department also serves as a clearinghouse and kind of like an internal project manager for these county projects, well, private projects that are being applied through to the county. And so we coordinate with all these other departments, say like Public Works or the Office of the Fire Marshal or Environmental Health or the Building Department. And we do that so we can combine all these different regulations and make sure that the proposed development is in alignment with all the other regulations from the county departments as well. So we have this cohesive project that's being presented before the hearing bodies. For some projects, we also work with like state agencies like say CAL FIRE or Fish and Wildlife or Caltrans, and it's just the same process of just making sure the project's in alignment with those state regulations as well. During the review of these projects, we also conduct environmental review pursuant to the guidelines of the California Environmental Quality Act. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Once we've done the project review and we've got a project that has gone through that review process, we notify the public through sending out notices to people who want to be notified. We post it in the newspaper and also send out notices to homeowners that are nearby to inform them of this public hearing. The planning department will present to the hearing body, which can be the zoning administrator, the planning commission, or the board of supervisors based off of the type of the project. And that also gives the public an opportunity to stay involved and also voice their concerns or their support of a project. And kind of aside from project review, another service that the planning department has is to provide information to the general public or different professionals just regarding land use policies. And we're always available for help or support through phone, email, or through the front counter here at the Rood Center. So this next slide is just a little bit more information about the California Environmental Quality Act, which we just mentioned a moment ago. The California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, is a state law that was enacted in 1970. It requires government agencies in California to identify and evaluate the impact of their actions before approving a project. CEQA is a process, and it's to inform decision makers and the public about potential environmental impacts, reduce or avoid environmental damage when feasible, and promote transparency and public involvement for applicable projects. CEQA is a disclosure document, and although it aims to reduce impacts on the environment, it does not require the complete elimination of impacts. CEQA includes a standardized list of environmental topics and questions. The impact on these environmental topics is considered during the environmental review. The significance of an impact is determined based on scientific, factual, and expert-based evidence and compared against commonly adopted significance thresholds. This analysis conducted during the CEQA review may result in an exemption, a negative declaration, a mitigated negative declaration, or an environmental impact report. So that concludes the CEQA discussion, and I'll pass it off to Zach, who can provide a little bit more information about our discretionary review.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Zachary Rubal, and I'm an associate planner here with the Nevada County Planning Department. And as David alluded to earlier, one of the aspects of current planning is planning includes reviewing discretionary projects. Discretionary projects are projects that require the judgment or the deliberation by a public agency in order to make the determination of whether or not a project will be approved or denied. And these are typically brought before the applicable hearing body within 90 days of the planning department deeming the project complete for processing. So some examples of discretionary projects are conditional use permits. We have development permits. There's tentative parcel maps and tentative final maps, and those are more related to utilizing the Subdivision Map Act and ensuring compliance with those. And then like general plan amendments and rezones as well. And those are just a few. There are other discretionary entitlements as well. So once an application has been submitted, the project planner will then distribute all of the project materials to all of the applicable reviewing agencies, as well as county departments such as the Building Department, Department of Public Works, Environmental Health, and et cetera, and any public member as well who has requested to be on this notification list, and so they would also be notified as well. And this also includes our tribal consultation. So as a part of discretionary processing, we do have consultation with the Native and American tribes, and so that is pursuant to Assembly Bill 52. And during that time, so we reach out to them and we confirm whether or not any of the applicable tribes would like to consult, in which they would come out and conduct a site survey and take a look and see if there are any tribal cultural resources that may be present on the parcel that might need to be protected. So the initial review period is a 30-day review period, and in that period is where the applicant will then either be provided an incomplete packet, which gives very specific information on any type of revisions that are needed or any additional information or documents that are needed in order to move forward with the project, or the individual would receive a complete packet. And a complete packet would also include a cost estimate for the remainder of the planning review time that would be required in order to take the process all the way through completion. So during the review process, the planning department reviews the application documents to ensure compliance with multiple different types of aspects of the zoning ordinance. And some of those are the site development standards. We have comprehensive site development standards. There's resource standards. And then there are also applicable design guidelines. For example, discretionary projects in Western Nevada County are subject to the Western Nevada County Design Guidelines, and that's a document we have on our website. And similar to projects over in Eastern County, any discretionary project over in Eastern County would be subject to the Eastern Nevada County Design Guidelines as well. And as Steve had referenced a little bit earlier as well, there are also area plans, and sometimes a parcel will fall into an area plan. And a lot of the time, the area plans are a little bit more stringent and then they have specific requirements that do incorporate either the Western or the Eastern Nevada County guidelines into them already, so that it just makes it easy to just have one document to comply with that and kind of encompasses everything. So once the complete packet has been sent, that's when environmental review begins. So environmental review is where the planning department makes the determination if the project is either exempt from CEQA, or if not exempt, then an initial study is conducted. And then as a part of that initial study, that is where we determine what type of environmental document is needed. And this, as was alluded to earlier, would either be a negative declaration, a mitigated negative declaration, or an environmental impact report. And then after the completion of the environmental document for the project, then all of the environmental documents are posted online for a mandatory review period of 30 days for public review and comment. And a notice of a notice of availability for public review and a notice of intent to adopt a mitigated negative declaration or whatever the environmental document is mailed out to all of the neighboring property owners within either 300 feet or 500 feet. And that's going to depend on the parcel or the project parcel's zoning designation and their parcel size. And then and additionally here as well, any public member who's also requested to be notified as well would also be notified again during this process as well. So then once the environmental document has been completed and posted accordingly, then the project planner begins preparing the staff report and all of the associated attachment documents that would go with it. And during this time as well, the public hearing is officially scheduled and to get on either the Planning Commission or the Zoning Administrator or the Board of Supervisors, whichever the applicable hearing body would be. And then during that time, a notice of public hearing is also sent out to all of the property owners within 300 or 500 feet, similar to the environmental type notification. If any other public members have also requested to be on the notification list as well, then that would be a third time that they would be notified of the project where they could provide comments or any sort of things as well. And then from there, the project planner then takes the proposal to the applicable hearing body, gives a presentation, and answers any questions that the hearing body may have regarding the project. Then after that, the public hearing body will listen to all of the presentations, public testimony, and then after deliberation, a project action is made by the hearing body, which will either be for approval, for denial, or in some cases, they can make a motion to continue the hearing to a later date if applicable. Okay, so we talked a little bit, I kind of referenced how the public can be involved with these discretionary projects and in the process. And so there are 3 opportunities and ways that the public can be involved in any sort of discretionary process. So the first initial period is during that initial distribution process. So as mentioned earlier, if an owner or a property owner or anybody requests to be on a project notification list, and then they are more than welcome to do so. And if they provide us a distance, for example, any discretionary projects or any use permits within a half a mile of my residence, then as a part of when we're doing the initial distribution, we would find any individuals who are within that range, and if they are a part of the notification list, they would be notified. And during that initial portion so that they are well aware that the project was submitted for and is moving forward. Then the second opportunity for public involvement was during the environmental review phase. So once the environmental review is completed, as mentioned earlier, all of the documents get posted online, and then that's when the notice of availability and the notice of intent to adopt the environmental document would be sent out to all of the individual property owners within 300 feet or 500 feet, depending on the zoning and parcel size, and then also as well as any individual property owner or anybody who requests to be notified as well. So that's the second area or time that an individual could be involved in the process. And then the third and more final process or involvement where the public could have is once the staff report is complete, then as mentioned earlier, a notice of public hearing gets sent out. And so similar to the environmental review as well, it goes out to all property owners within 300 or 500 feet, depending on zoning and parcel size of the project parcel, and then any and all individuals who have also requested to be notified. So in doing this, this kind of process, there's 3 separate ways or 3 separate times that any individual in Nevada County, if they wanted, they could provide comments, they could ask questions, and just be involved in the project if that's desired by them. And so then here on the screen, and we also did include them into your packet as well, so you can see them a little bit better. But this is it's like a workflow and a flow chart that goes through the process. So kind of like a little bit just how I discussed in the previous, or the two slides ago, the actual discretionary process, it lays it out in a nice flow chart for you so you can actually see it and you can take it home with you. And then, yeah, if you do have any other questions about it, you can always feel free to reach out. Alrighty, and so then that does cover discretionary review. So now I'm going to pass it over to Alina Church, and she's going to go over administrative review.
All right, hi. My name is Alina Church, and I'm an assistant planner here at the Nevada County Planning Department. And I'll be going over a bit about administrative review projects. So these projects don't require public hearing. They don't go to the zoning administrator, planning commission, or the board of supervisors, and they can be approved by a planner like myself. These are entirely staff level, like I said, meaning that it is here for a more streamlined process that are more minor in scope than discretionary projects or current planning projects. There still is that 30-day initial review period that provides for, again, that more streamlined turnaround while ensuring that those applicable standards are met. Some of those standards that we're looking at when looking at administrative projects is, you know, your setbacks, making sure you're in the right zone, making sure that there's no streams or ponds on your property, making sure there's not any steep slopes on the property that would inhibit construction in any way. And with applying those general plan and zoning ordinances, it should be a more straightforward approval process. This helps property owners move on with their ADU construction, with building permits, or with things like the more lot line adjustments that are changing property boundaries but without additional lots. Another example is cannabis administrative development permits, where that's the cultivation of indoor, mixed light, outdoor cannabis. We also do setback easements, so requests to modify building setbacks for more practical design and site placement of your build. Also management plans, like I said, we look for those streams and we look for the ponds. But if you need to encroach in those, we offer a management plan to be able to mitigate the impacts to those environmentally sensitive areas. These applications are also dependent on your hired professional. So a lot of times you're going to be working with an engineer or a surveyor or a biologist during these projects. And so your timelines are also going to be based on your hired professional's timelines, right? Another big thing that people ask is, do I go in and submit projects? Do my hired professional do that for me? And it's either or. You can hire your surveyor to conduct the project for you, or you can be your own representative. As an assistant planner, I also do a lot of the more ministerial administrative projects, like if you got a new single-family residence or an ADU, I'm the one that assigns you an address. I'm also the project planner for the Truckee River rafting inspections and their renewal that they do every 2 years. And in addition to just having these projects go down, I'm also here to help you through the process if you ever have questions, if you're ever thinking just, hey, what are my property setbacks in case I want to build on my property? I'm usually the person that you're going to be talking to. I am always at the front counter available, so yeah, with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Justine, who will continue the administrative review process.
Hi, everyone. My name is Justine Quealy. I'm an assistant planner with the department, and I wanted to share a little bit more detail about what the administrative process looks like when you're actually submitting an application. So as Alina shared, the administrative permits can include some of those specific applications that can be reviewed by staff and completed just through the staff process and not go before a hearing. But in order to get through that process, you need a complete application to start with. So what does that look like? It, first of all, must contain all the required information and all the items that are listed in the application packet. And each of those checklists is going to be different for each type of administrative process. The forms then are completed, signed, and then submitted, and this includes a hard copy, an electronic copy that can be on a flash drive, and all of that gets put together and submitted to the planning department at the front counter. It also must be accompanied by any supporting documents that are required. This can include your site plan set, photographs, specific reporting, and all of that is going to be different for each different application type. At the same time, your application fees need to be paid, and that marks your complete application being submitted. So once you have put all that together and you're ready to submit it, you bring it in person to the front counter at the planning department and drop it off. A planner will take it in, we'll put it into our system, so then we can route it and review it. And that is when your 30-day review period kicks off. So now your project has been assigned to a planner who's going to route that project to other agencies, other departments for their review and comment, and this can include other community development agencies such as environmental health, public works, other outside agencies such as Nevada Irrigation District or the Northern Sierra Air Quality Management District, and all of those reviewing bodies are going to compile their comments and submit them to the planner, who is essentially acting as the project manager for your application. They're going to do their own review to ensure that the project is compliant and consistent with the Nevada County Code and all of the governing documents that we've reviewed during this presentation. Then comes your project determination. So within 30 days of your project submittal, your review team, which includes the planning department, those other departments, those other agencies, they're going to determine whether your project is in compliance or not. And if there's not enough adequate information to make that determination, you will be receiving an incomplete notice, and that gives you an opportunity to put more information together and resubmit. So at this point, you're going to receive a notification that the project is deemed incomplete. It's going to have a list of items that are required in the resubmittal, or you're going to receive a notice of conditional approval, which will include specific conditions that have to be addressed prior to your project implementation. So in the case of incomplete determination, which does happen, all of your responses to those department and agency comments and incomplete items will need to be compiled into one resubmittal. You resubmit that the same way you submitted the original application, and the 30-day review process begins again. Once you've gone through that process or it was deemed complete, first of all, the application will be, sorry, I lost my place. After the application is determined to be complete, your project is determined to meet all the requirements, it's consistent with the code, everything is perfect and good to go, you will receive a notice of conditional approval that will be sent out. That notice of conditional approval will go into effect 10 days after your project approval decision was made, and this allows for an appeal period if there is one. So after 10 days, it's ready to go, and your conditional approval is going to include certain conditions that have to be addressed with certain timing. This often includes a defense and indemnification agreement that needs to be signed by the applicant and turned back into the planning department. And then once you've received approval for your land use entitlement, you are ready to take the next step, perhaps to apply for a building permit or a different kind of permit. And at this point, I will hand it over to Susan, who's going to cover what the building permit process looks like.
Hi, I'm Susan McLendon. I am a senior community development technician. My primary role is site plan review for building permits. The planning review is often required for building departments, by the building department for building permit issuance. We review the building permit to make sure that it's consistent with our zoning, with our setbacks, permitted uses, and conditions of approval. Additionally, we review for compliance of resource standards. So these review, in some cases, lead to requirements of management plans that we talked a little bit about in the administrative process. These additional plans' purpose is to mitigate potential impacts to sensitive resources associated with said proposed projects that require a building permit. The plan may be specific to something like steep slopes, waterways, water bodies, and protected oak resources. After the approval of land use entitlements, a building permit may be applied for. In coordination with all the other county departments, the plans are reviewed for that. And once the building permit is approved, construction can commence. I'm available at the building or at the planning counter Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Also phone, always open for questions, work closely with the building department to get building permit issuance. Thank you.
Last but not least, I'm Dan Collins. I'm your Nevada County Fire Planner, and I have a very interesting job here with Nevada County. I oversee the responsibilities for the fire protection and how we apply them to planning matters moving forward here in Nevada County. I'm also responsible in review of enforcement and all the applicable fire safety laws, standards, and regulations, and review the fire compliance in all the projects here in Nevada County. Also provide testimony with CAL FIRE unit, the unit here in Nevada Yuba Placer, and county representation on the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors and other local government boards and commissioners and fire protection, land use, and planning matters related to Nevada County. Also work with other fire jurisdictions in the local area, the state responsibility area. There's 22 fire departments in our area that I also represent between Nevada, a small part of Yuba County, and Sierra County. I work with various state and local government agencies and boards and commissions and further development and changes with the Nevada County fire ordinances. And also I do some state responding to emergencies as needed in Nevada County, and I just got back from Southern California, so I'm well-traveled and versed in those kind of things. And if anyone has any questions on my job title or any questions you have regarding fire involvement with the SRA, I'm available for questions after the meeting. Thank you, guys.
All right, so we were talking about a lot of different resources, from knowing the current status of upcoming projects, the zoning ordinance, the general plan, and all that stuff. So we got this handout for you guys to give you some of that information of where to find it. It's just right here on the planning website. On the screen, when you log onto the planning website, you'll see a menu that looks like this bar over here on the right hand, and that's where you can stay in the loop with these current and advanced projects that are coming up. Different environmental documents associated with those projects. You can see the zoning ordinance, and also you can see the My Neighborhood map. One of the things I'll like to point out in particular is that My Neighborhood map. It's a publicly accessible tool where you can find out some useful information about the different parcels in Nevada County. You can toggle some of the layers and see topography. There's our good representation of the property lines of all the parcels. It's not a substitute for a professional survey, but it's just good for general informational purposes. You can click on the different parcels and see some of the permits associated with all of them. And you can also toggle some of the layers to see your zoning and your general plan designation. There's way more layers than that, so I definitely recommend checking it out. Some of the other things that are on your handout are this flow chart for the discretionary land use entitlement process, which my coworker Zach was talking about. We don't have the administrative process on there, but the discretionary one is there. And we also have some links to the general plan, all the different elements in it, and the Nevada County fee schedule, so you have some sort of idea about the costs associated with any project you're considering doing. And with that, I'll give it back to the planning director, Brian Foss.
Thanks, David. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. There was a lot of information and buzzwords thrown out at you all. We're happy to open it up for questions if you have some specific or areas that you want more information on, or we'll just start with questions, and I'll probably just repeat your question because we're recording and going out. So go ahead, sir. So the question is regarding how the public is notified regarding a cell tower application, essentially. So a cell tower application is a discretionary process that requires a use permit and goes to the zoning administrator. It would be notified in the same manner as any other type of discretionary process. So if you're within a certain distance of the property, you would be automatically notified. If you're interested in getting on a list to be notified of all cell towers or all cell towers in a certain area, we can take your name and information, and then you'd be provided notice at the beginning of the steps, as we tried to go over with the initial application, and then at the additional steps throughout the process with the environmental review and the notice of the public hearing. Yes, ma'am. Mhm. Yeah, so the question is regarding an application after we reviewed it. Does the planning department or the county ever essentially say no or deny an application? Yes, rarely. What the process generally is we try to work with applicants so that they can understand where their application is missing the mark, if you will. Early on, if it's an application that is just not allowed in that zoning, generally, we will have that discussion with the applicant and say that it's inconsistent with the zoning. We're unable to move your application forward. You need to either amend your application to do something that's allowed within that zone district, or there's a potential that you need to apply for a zone change and change your zoning to make it an allowable use. So we work with applicants all the time to have them understand what's allowed, what's not allowed, what the criteria is to be consistent in order to move that project forward to a decision maker. On occasion, there are some projects where we may not be supportive of what's being proposed, whether it might be a zone change, a general plan amendment, or a parcel that, or a project, that may create significant impacts to the neighborhood or in the environment. And so our recommendation would be for denial before the decision makers. Like I said, we generally try to explain all that with applicants and work through it so we don't spend the time and the money to just get to no. But sometimes people want to pursue their applications, and they have every right to do that, and they have a right to have a hearing before the decision makers to make that determination. If the Board of Supervisors or the Planning Commission finds the project consistent and allowable, then they can override, if you will, staff's recommendation and go ahead and approve a project, and vice versa. We can recommend approval of a project at a staff level, and the supervisors or the Planning Commission may not agree and want the project changed or recommend denial. But it's something that we work with the applicants throughout the process, so it's not just a surprise decision that you submit an application and you don't know if it's going to be recommended for approval or not. We work with them throughout to understand where their application is causing conflicts and whether or not it can be modified, or if it needs to be recommended for denial just for inconsistencies with our plans. Hope that answers your question. Kind of long-winded. Yeah, so the question is there a way to look up the application on Acela, which is our kind of digital project management system? And I want to look over here at my planners, and yes, there is. You can log into the portal, the public access portal. What's it called? Citizens Access. Citizens Access portal, and I believe you need the application number or the APN number. And then that would give you a status of where that application is and some information about the project description and some of the application documents, maybe the site plan and any supporting documents like a traffic study or biological study. Yes, the questions regarding is there assistance available in the building for navigating Acela? Yeah, we can try to walk you through that program to learn how to use it at your own, at your own home, your own computer, your own phone. The front counter, and talk to one of our planners over here. We're open 8 to 5, and so they can kind of walk you through it. It's probably best to do it when we have access to our computer to show you how to walk through it. We can maybe give you some information after this meeting, but it might be more helpful to sit down in front of a computer with you. Right. You got a question over here? So questions regarding kind of developing new codes and encouragement for certain requirements to address environmental concerns, whether it's water or sewer or septic. So those are generally policy decisions that are directed by the Board of Supervisors. So if there is a direction from the board for the planning department to look into developing a new ordinance or a new requirement that's going to apply to building or a discretionary type project, planning would most likely be involved in help drafting that ordinance, because usually we draft ordinances in our zoning ordinance or a general plan. There could be some need to involve like environmental health, if it involves, septic systems or gray water systems. It may affect some of their codes, but generally it's driven by either state mandates that are required that come out from the legislature or a desire of the Board of Supervisors to pursue new regulations or new requirements. Staff generally doesn't initiate those without board direction or mandate from the state. There is a process where if there's interest from the community can have dialogue with a board member or the board in general and say, we think this might be a good idea. And if the board agrees, then they would direct staff to look into that and go through that process, which would involve public involvement, drafting of an ordinance, running it through the Planning Commission, and ultimately the Board of Supervisors for approval. So kind of depending on the issue, that if it affects our codes, but like I said, usually the Planning Department would draft zoning-related ordinances. Building Department would be involved with building codes. So it's a CDA issue, but depending on the issue, depending on the department. Correct. It would be either directed by the board, or if it's a state mandate, then staff would initiate it in order to keep the county in compliance. Or if there is an applicant or a member of the public can propose an ordinance change as well, but then that person would be responsible for the payment of the time and the additional studies that may be required for staff to analyze and develop an ordinance basis. So it can be done privately through an application, but generally when it's county-wide, it's best if it comes through either a requirement or the board direction. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so the questions regarding the cell tower ordinance and the comments that have been received and the timing of it going to the decision makers, the planning commission. So we've circulated the draft document for public comment and have received a number of comments, as you've mentioned. We review those comments, and currently David's working on it, and we're going through the comments received and making changes or amendments or implementing some of those suggestions where applicable, where it meets what we think is a reasonable ordinance with also kind of the objectives of the ordinance. Every comment that is received is noted as part of the public record and will be part of the information packet that's given to the decision makers. We try to address and summarize the main themes of the comments that have been received. If we receive one or two, it's easier to address one or two. If we receive 150, we kind of try to break them up into categories, and we'll address some of that in our staff report, which is our written analysis of the pros and the cons of the ordinance, the input we received, why we've made some changes, why we haven't, for the decision makers to consider. As far as the timing, we don't have a date quite yet. It will probably be more like October, November before it goes to the Planning Commission, and it goes to the Planning Commission first, and they'll make a recommendation to the board, and the Board of Supervisors will make their determination at another notice public hearing that will likely be after the first of the year. And if you're interested, we can put you on the list for notification of those dates. Great. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Sure. Questions regarding information about a water group up in North San Juan area. I don't know exactly who you might be referring to. Our environmental health department, who permits wells and septic, may have some information. Just trying to think of my contacts over the years. I know the North San Juan Taxpayers Association was a group that was very interested in groundwater issues, and so that could be a group. They're not, okay. They're not around anymore, apparently. That's the only one that comes to mind. So maybe our environmental health division is the best thing I can think of at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, so questions regarding the appropriate county department for mapping questions. Our surveyor, we have a county surveyor that works for the county. He doesn't provide kind of private surveyor advice, but he is the most expertise, has the most expertise in reviewing old maps, old legal descriptions, legality of parcels, how legal descriptions describe a piece of property. And so generally the way that works, if we have an application in for a building permit or a lot line adjustment, he will review that document, the county's historical data to see what recorded maps we have that determine whether that's a legal map or a legal parcel or not. He's involved with subdivisions, lot line adjustments. If you're trying to find information about, your property, the recorder's office would have access to old recorded maps and deeds that would describe the property. And another option would be just a private surveyor that would be available to interpret any legal descriptions or access or easements that may occur across a piece of property. We do. A lot of times, we have to go back pretty far to determine whether or not a parcel was legally created, how it was conveyed. That kind of is all dictated through the Subdivision Map Act. There are certain timeframes that if it was done prior to 1972, it needed to be done a certain way. If it was done after 1972, it needed to be done through a map process. And usually that's can be a mystery. So we follow the chain of title. We find out how a parcel was created, how it was conveyed. We've gone back to Spanish land grants, to mining claims, et cetera, to find that history. And so we don't always have all that information just at our fingertips. A lot of times that's required to find through the recorder's office that has some of those recorded documents. You can do a records request. We have a team of people that will search any of our documents that may have some information about old subdivisions. And then otherwise, like a title company or a private surveyor can help kind of sift through whatever documentation and make some determinations about it based on that. Sure. Any other questions by folks? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so questions regarding kind of the My Neighborhood GIS program and some of the layers. I'm not sure about the historical layers that may have designated your parcel historic or not. There is a number of layers that are public facing that show different, beyond zoning, it'll show trails or fire stations or earthquake zones. As far as historic nature of the parcel, there are old permits under a tab that may reference, like, if you're talking historic, like old subdivision maps that created the parcel. Sometimes there's some links to subdivision maps that helped create the parcel. But as far as, I'm not quite sure what you mean by if your parcel is historic or not. Oh, like a designated historical. I don't think we have a layer for that. I think our Historical Advisory Commission may be a resource to use. There's some information about them on our website, and they are responsible for kind of doing some research and history and determining whether or not a building, a piece of property, can qualify for historic status, and then they make recommendations to the board of supervisors, and the board will designate something as historic based on some criteria. But it sounds like you're looking at like a trail easement, if there was a trail across your property at one point in time. Okay. It could be on a recorded map, the subdivision map that created the parcel will show easements, and I know down in like Lodestar and Sunshine Valley areas, there are historic trail easement for the Immigrant Trail on some of those maps that were created in the 70s. That would be the recorder's office. You can ask for the map and any historical maps that are on that for your property, and they'll be able to pull up those maps and show what those, if there's any easements or designations on the property based on the original subdivision. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you. I appreciate you all coming out. I hope there was some helpful information. We do have a lot of this on the website, and we'll be posting this presentation there as well. to review any resource documents, links to other information that we have. And then, as we mentioned, we're here available by phone, email, or coming into the front counter to answer questions you have related to your land use entitlements, and can help direct you to other county departments that we may not be able to answer, such as the assessor or other CDA departments like environmental health or building. But appreciate your time tonight, and thank you all for coming out, and thank you. Take care.